Okay, I think we should be. Give me a minute to just check it on YouTube. Yes, we're good to go.
Brilliant. Okay. Oh my gosh, I can see everybody coming in. That's amazing. Yeah, do say wherever you are. Hi to Demetra's cat. We've had cats. We had all of the cats before we started. So hopefully, fingers crossed, there might be some more cats in a bit, because they are, to be honest, a little bit more important than we are, as they will tell you. So hi, everybody. My name is Esther MacCallum-Stewart. My pronouns are she and her. And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to the second Scottish Underrepresented Voices science fiction event for this incredibly cold in the UK evening. So I've got a little bit of housekeeping and paperwork and introductions, which I'm going to read. So if I look a little bit unfocused, it's because I'm reading from a transcript. So sorry about that. But yeah, so hello on this cold winter's night or afternoon or good morning, depending on where in the world or worlds you're joining us. And I can see everybody letting us know. That's amazing. And as they say thematically, tonight will be bad, but tomorrow will be beyond all imagining. Really enjoying rereading that at the moment. My name is Professor Esther MacCallum-Stewart, and I am a Professor of Game Studies at Staffordshire University. And most importantly, or more importantly for today's event, I'm the co-investigator for the AHRC funded research network, Future Voices of Scottish Science Fiction and Fantasy. And I'm delighted to be joined tonight by Principal Investigator in Chief, Dr. Demetra Feeney, who you can see with her absolutely fantastic Lord of the Rings icon there, who is the Senior Lecturer in Fantasy and Children's Literature and the co-director of the Centre for Fantasy and the Fantastic at the University of Glasgow. So the Future Voices of Scottish Science Fiction and Fantasy privileges underrepresented Scottish voices of science fiction and fantasy, that's SFF. And it's working across different media. So literature, gaming, film, art, audio, different types of audio, with an emphasis on BIPOC and LGBTQ+ communities, as well as practitioners with disabilities. And in these dramatic times, we ask how creative practitioners can imagine future worlds and respond to the absolutely rapidly changing global circumstances. I mean, they're all around us. I don't really need to sort of name what they are. So, you know, but also sort of concerns and anxieties, which is what really triggered this bid. So things like Me Too and Black Lives Matter, through the lens of science fiction writing, art and creativity. And the network is the first step towards building strong collaborations between academics, creative practitioners, fans and stakeholders, with a view to contributing to the agenda and conversations leading up to Worldcon in 2024, which is going to be in Glasgow this year. And oh, what a surprise! I am also the chair of the Glasgow Worldcon. What a strange coincidence. So we'd like to thank the AHRC for funding this project, and just about them very briefly. The AHRC is the Arts and Humanities Research Council. It's a British research council supporting research and postgraduate study in the arts and humanities. And actually to have secured funding from them for a science fiction and fantasy project, particularly with this theme, is something that Demetra and I are completely over the moon and beyond. You know, it was a long way getting there, and we're really glad that we did. So we'd also like to thank the project's steering group, who are made up of SFF publishers, editors, academics, Glasgow Worldcon and other convention committee members, and also the Scottish BIPOC Writers Network. And there's details of all of these on the project's website. So tonight's event is the second of 4 public events the network is organising, and they all examine the ways in which contemporary science fiction and fantasy practitioners, visualise the future, build worlds, and bring their voices to really momentous global changes through the lens of SFF. And tonight's event, ta-da, is focusing on change and the future. And so I'm really delighted and very excited to be welcoming these 4 brilliant creative practitioners who we're going to be hearing from this evening. And I can't see you, so I'm just going to hope that you're going to wave or thumbs up or do whatever you can, because I'm reading the script. So we have artist Tanya Roberts.
Hi.
We have writer Kirsty Logan. We have writer Lorraine Wilson, and we have musician artist Lily Higham. And between them, oh my goodness, reading all the biographies and trying to put things together. They've been to the far corners of the world. They've been to other worlds. They fought these battles all over the place. Some of them they're in their minds. Some of them are in real life. They've almost certainly won a few. Collectively, they've encountered the Fae, dragons, wolves, Sith Lords, and the sea. A lot of you seem to have encountered the sea quite a lot. And they've explored world building across different media. And I'm really, really looking forward to listening to what everybody has to say this evening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce each person in turn, and then they are going to showcase some of their work. But I'm also just going to tell you first about the format of the event and just do a little bit of housekeeping. So first, each speaker will begin with a reading or short media extract, and they'll give us their opening response to the main research question of tonight's event. And the main question is, how does science fiction and fantasy engage with the future as a time when inequalities may be altered or improved, or a space to imagine the worst if inequalities are allowed to continue? And then I'll open the floor for questions from all of you. And I'll try not to ask too many questions first, but I will ask a few, I suspect. So if you've got a question, could you put it in the Q&A box, and can you indicate if it's specifically for one of the speakers or if it's a more general question? Please don't use the chat, because I am sure it's still scrolling. So things just get lost. Marita and Dimitra, there's only two of them. So it's quite difficult for them to sort of feed things back to me. I've also realized they haven't told me how they're going to do that. So they're going to do that in a minute. But also, please do use the chat to post general comments and reactions. And, please don't, we are recording this. Not too many aubergines and peaches, please. Keep it secret, keep it safe. But I should also remind you that the event is being recorded and live streamed via both the YouTube channel for the Centre for Fantasy and the Fantastic, and that the recording will remain on that channel and the project's website permanently. So the chat will be automatically saved so that we can trace and preserve ideas, suggestions, and feedback. We'd also really like the conversations that will start this evening to continue beyond the event. And so for this reason, we also have both a dedicated forum on the Centre for Fantasy and the Fantastics Discord server. Please do join us there. But we've also commissioned 4 early career academics, one for each event, to provide a written, theory-informed response to each discussion. So those will go up afterwards with the sort of questions, provocations, and issues from each event. Each of these scholars is working on different aspects of intersectionality, inclusivity and diversity, and their written responses will be published on the network website. Do go along and have a look at Alice's, which was from the first one. But tonight we're delighted to be joined by Dr. Taylor Driggers from the University of Glasgow. So last few practical things, I promise this is the last bit, no more scrolling. Many thanks to, Madalena Dalezu, who'll be live tweeting if Twitter's still up, if Twitter's still there, who knows. But our network Twitter handle is #FutureScotSFF. Don't say mean things about Elon. He'll become sad and use his magic. So anyway, many thanks also to Hannah Barton and Grace Worm, who will be helping out with the post-event and have been working on the Discord. Please also be reminded that the event falls under a double whammy of code of conducts. So both those for the Centre for Fantasy and the Fantastic here at Glasgow, and also those of Glasgow in 2024. Last but not least, enormous thanks to Marita Aravanti, who's why am I pointing? You can't see her in the same place. Who's up on the left there, our network administrator, and without her we would just not be doing anything. We'd just all be running around in circles. Okay, So without further ado, let me introduce the first person to speak, which means that I just need to switch screens. And that person is Kirsty. So Kirsty Logan is a professional daydreamer. She's the author of 3 novels, 3 story collections, a memoir, and 2 chapbooks. She lives in Glasgow with her wife, her baby, and a rescue dog. Pets night tonight. She's currently working on a short musical, a short story collection, and a very long novel, and also has an audio book, which is a ghost story about being in the Arctic that has just been released. So Kirsty, could you start us off, please?
Thank you, Esther. What a great intro. And yeah, thanks for inviting me. I'm so excited to hear what everyone has to share and say. I'm really looking forward to digging in. So as Esther said, I'm primarily an author of books. I'm the author of 8 books now, including Now She Is Witch, which is a medieval witch revenge quest novel, which is coming out in January, and also The Unfamiliar, which is a memoir of queer pregnancy and parenthood, which is coming out in July next year. I also do a lot of collaborative work, and what I'm going to share tonight is from a collaborative project that I was involved in recently with Kirsty Law and Esther Swift, who are a musician and a harpist, respectively. And we did a show at the Scottish Storytelling Centre called The Pulling of the Rose, which was a retelling of Tamlin. Tamlin might be a story that you're familiar with. It's a very ancient story. It's an old ballad. It's nearly 500 years old. And the very short version is that Tamlin is about a woman named Janet who goes into the woods, meets a mysterious man, somehow falls pregnant, and then ventures back into the woods to pick some herbs because she doesn't want to have this baby. Tamlin appears and says, "Why are you taking what is mine? Why are you plucking these plants?" And she says, no, all of this is mine. And he says that he has been kidnapped by the Queen of Fairies, and if she wants to rescue him, she has to pull him down from his horse and hold him as he transforms into various beasts, and eventually he will be human, and she will win him in the end. But we set our version of Tamlin in a near future dystopian Scotland. And I'm just going to play you just an audio clip that we opened the show with, and then I'm going to read you a small section from that. So I'm just going to, if you give me a second, I'm just going to, in theory, share my screen. Here we go. Oh, Siri thinks I'm talking to it, sorry.
I know Dimitra can help you as well, but make sure you share sound as well.
Screen. Yeah, so this should, in theory, please motion to me if it is not working. But this should share just my little audio thing. So I'm just going to play you, it's just a couple of minutes from the beginning. And it starts quite quiet, but it gets louder. So if you need to turn the volume down, then please feel free.
Reports in that 95% of UK asylum seekers unable to pay digit tax, a new tax brought in by the latest Tory Max government involving means testing by the number of fingers and toes present on arrival. Meanwhile, refugees from the UK fleeing the country find no room at the inn in Europe's refugee camps.
Update on the new Apple Live link. Spokesperson promises you'll never need to worry about forgetting your device, as it will be implanted directly into your eye.
Get the latest from the Hobbycraft winter range. Knit your own life partner.
Update on the Clydeside flooding. Biblical levels of rising water prompt a surge in religious zeal, with almost 75% of the city reverting to Old Testament scripture.
You've tried Pygmy Pig. Now get ready for the trending new pack. Inexpensive and ideal for small pets. Woodland.
Government defends decision to pay out pensions in gold coins in bags marked swag.
Dig out a dinosaur that we buried for you.
Let our AI tell you about your intelligence. Are you good enough?
Anti-nuclear titanium windows, now at an all-time low price. Don't wait for someone to press that big red button.
Designer Vivienne Westwood announces her new neon bodysuit range, which promises to protect the wearer against acid rain.
Everything hurts? Download our new empathy reduction app. We promise you won't feel a thing.
Treetops burn, whilst flooded roots rot.
Scottish farmers promise to shoot down Storm Ruri. You've got lightning, but we've got bullets, local man says.
Motivational shampoo.
Pro-life organisation Tumour Life League defends the rights of the latest rare sarcoma case. Surgery is tumour murder activist league.
Mars mortgages skyrocket. Forest fires devastate cryogenic freezing facility. Zombie fields.
New flats to be built for the decommissioned oil refinery 50 miles out to sea.
Creative. No, this way.
Learn a musical instrument without playing a musical instrument.
Do you need a belief system to share on your Tinder profile? Sign up to our premium subscription for a selection.
Okay, so that's just the intro to that. I'm just going to read you a small spoken word section. So the story picks up after Janet has emerged from the woods after her tryst with Tamlin. And the show is mostly in Janet's voice. I emerged from the night holding a rose in my hand. The rubble, the clouded sky, the shifting ground. I'd known new worlds. I'd felt myself unfurl, but I heard, you're still just a girl, you're still just a girl. A man old enough to be my father, who was not my father nor anyone else's either, said to me, alas, for your shame, alas, we'll all be blamed. And I told him, you feel shame if you want to. You've enough years to know how that feels, but I'll be taking none of it. A man who'd once asked me to go with him to the back seat of his car, to the shadows behind the school, to the couch while his brothers slept, said to me, it's a shame, really a shame, you didn't take my name. And I told him I'll share what I want with whomever I please, but I'll never be pleased by you. A woman who'd been hurt and thought I was the same told me how to play the game, told me how to be safe and good and clean, told me how I could make it right and appease. And I told her, you do what's right for you, and I'll do what's right for me. I felt myself unfurl, and I knew I may be a girl, I may be a girl, but this is mine. This is mine. This is mine. This is mine. So then I went out into the world and I met a Selkie, sleek-skinned shapeshifter. I met two women who'd made a child between them. I met a mermaid, legs to walk and tail to swim. I met someone who knew just who they were, though they couldn't speak it. I met a changeling, stolen from home, but making a new one. And on my way home, I realized there was another way, because they knew what was theirs. And this is mine. This is mine. This is mine. This is mine. And thank you. I will just leave it there.
Brilliant, thank you. Gosh, I feel like the sense of drama from that as a sort of opener was really appropriate. So thank you very much. Cool. Okay, well, I mean, let's go on from one sort of collaborative person to another. I think again, this sort of these collections of sort of sound and audio are really interesting. So Lily Higham is one half of Post Cole, Prom Queen, which is a duo of producer-composers in Scotland. And they create unique retro-futurist soundscapes fused with their pop sensibilities. And they're also the host of the Last Question podcast, which you should absolutely go and listen to, where they interview people at the cutting edge of science and invite them to speculate as wildly as they can about the future. So I think, Lily, you're going to show us something as well, aren't you? So.
Yes, thanks for the introduction. I'll start with giving you a few more details about it, and then I'm going to show you some of a music video. I won't be able to show you the whole thing because of our time limits, but I'll show you a little taster, and then if you like it, you can find it on YouTube yourself. So in our band, Post Cole Prom Queen, we write when we're writing the music, whether it's lyrics or just our kind of idea of the mood and feel of songs, we like to write on speculative and futuristic themes that look at how things will progress into the future, whether it is a utopian direction or dystopian direction, and how that affects people of all types in the future. We started this because me and Gordon met and found we were both big science fiction fans, and we've really both enjoy exploring these concepts and think that they are really good for people to hear about so that they can choose themselves kind of how they want the future to be and act in the way that they can help aid these futures come to be, and improve things as well amongst ourselves if we cooperate to improve things, to make things better. The example I'm going to play you is a hopeful speculative song about reaching a post-scarcity society with the use of advanced farming techniques and automation. A future that's only enabled by us manipulating nature with technology, which is kind of a way of showing that we're not just reliant on the state of nature, and humans can work together to do good if we cooperate in the right way and allow us to escape harmful societal systems that are partly caused by struggling for resources such as food, energy, time, and that kind of divide us as we're fighting for these things. We write a few about quite a lot of different topics, so that one is going to be about post-scarcity society. We've got also another one which is a bit fun about people being able to rent private human-sized Faraday cages like hotel pods, so they can go into those and escape all the telecommunications that are constantly bludgeoning our minds, and have a break from that. And there are also songs that are less optimistic, such as one we have called Salt, which is about sea levels rising due to climate change and the effect that has on people that live in certain parts of the world where their homes are flooded, and also farmland is destroyed due to being covered with seawater. And it's told from the perspective of someone who needs to leave their home because of this. And I think this is going to be one of the biggest crises that we're all going to experience, is climate refugees needing to settle in new places. And we will need to, a lot of people change their attitudes to immigration and citizenship and identity, fear of the other, improving our empathy for people that we see as different from us, but maybe have more in common than we think. So all of these things that we write about lyrically relate to the future and ways we can see us being able to improve it, and if things go wrong, make it worse. And the use of things like retro-futuristic synths interacts with this in quite an interesting way, because they are old style synths that you might hear in like 80s music or soundtracks of films that are older and trying to show a vision of the future. So they are older things, whereas the lyrics are about the future. But the thing is that these retro sounds we associate with the future, because when that kind of electronic music was being developed and became popular, a lot of it was very future looking as well, and people associate it with that futuristic feel. So amongst using modern production techniques, which are often invisible to the listener anyway, we try and use these retro-futuristic sounds because they connect with a sense of futurism that people have from other forms of media they've experienced. So with that, I'm going to play a little clip of one of our songs, and then and it's a lyric video, so you can see some of the lyrics coming up on the screen, and then I will finish and let someone else talk for a bit. So I'm going to share my screen now. And now I'm going to share my computer sound so you can hear it well. Okay.
Turn
just a taster there. I think that's enough from me. But that song was about vertical farming and futuristic agricultural techniques and automation, helping us have so much food that it's free for everyone and no one needs to go hungry. I'll pass over to whoever's next.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, take that, James Cameron. I keep seeing that trailer, and it was funny. I just could see all these sort of parallels with what he's trying to do in his vision on the trailers, and the shot of the people walking across the bridge. And I was like, oh, that's just much. It reminded me of the bridge in Bristol, actually. I know it wasn't, but I was like, oh, there's really nice parallels there. Okay, fantastic. So onwards. So the next person is, I believe, Tanya. Yes, it is. Yes, you are. So Tanya Roberts. So Tanya is an Edinburgh-based artist who's worked in the comic book industry for over a decade. She's worked on franchise titles. Hold on to your horses, everybody. Such as Star Wars: The Clone Wars, which I'm a massive fan of. Yeah, awkward. Toy Story, How to Train Your Dragon, Troll Hunters, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. She's also worked on indie titles like BHP's Plagued, and she's got her own comic book publishing company with her husband, which is called Blue Bottle Inc., which they use to promote their own books, and has written, I believe, 3 editions of her own comic, which is called Abeyance. So Tanya, I think you're going to take us through some images of some of the things that you've done and just talk very briefly about them. And you're on mute as well. I know, it's frustrating. If you go down to the bottom left.
Yes, am I unmuted? There we go. I did it. Yeah, no, that is you. Thank you for the great introduction. That was almost perfect, but
oh no, what did I go wrong?
No, we have three books at the moment, and the first one that we did, Abeyance, has 4 episodes, issues, whatever. But yeah, so I'm Tanya Roberts, and I've done all those things that that Esther said so graciously said that I did as well. But the thing in the last couple of years, and it's become more important to me now since the pandemic and everything, is the titles that I'm working on with my husband, the company that we started. The company, I don't know if you just put a trademark on it and it becomes yours, so that's the whole thing. But he's actually he started writing. He's kind of always been a writer, and when he went into policing, he kind of thought about, I was pregnant as well, so he kind of thought about like our future and what we want, and just wanted to work together on this comic that we started 5 years ago called Abeyance. And he wrote it when he was studying to be a cop, or when he was practicing to be a cop. And that's our longest running one, where I'm currently coloring, trying to say that fast, currently coloring the 5th issue at the moment. And it's about this, it's set in the Blitz. So this is our past story, this is our historical story. It's set in the Blitz, and it kind of follows this girl as she wanders through the ruins, and she finds this kind of little entity guy. And he's not quite a ghost, and he's not quite human, but it's kind of following their kind of friendship and the entities that they meet throughout it, and just the whole backdrop of London just exploding and everything. It's just great. And I have a few images from the 5th issue that I'm coloring at the moment. So hang on a second, let me see. Share screen. My Photoshop, yeah. So yeah, this is the 5th one, and that's one of the little guys. They're all blue, all the kind of little entities, they're there. And hang on, let me see. How can I do this? And then there's another page where she's kind of going into a dream sequence type thing. That kind of thing. And then we have our other one. Which one? That's my feet. That's my one. This is our the other one is kind of present day police procedural mixed with like this is kind of our first view of the monster. I think it's in the 3rd issue, but I'm only trying the 2nd issue at the moment. So this is like our little we did it as kind of our taster series. So that's like the first image of the crazy huge monster that we have from the series. But I will read the wonderfully put together synopsis. I don't do these. Synopses are hard to do, and I've written the next one that I'll tell you, but my husband is very, very good at the words thing. I not so much with the breaking down and making it succinct. So, a frail old man screws his eyes against the morning sun, rays glistening off the rippling tide. A stranger with a distant, knowing gaze, haunted yet familiar. A local tradition old as the tides, and mired in its darkest depths. The times change, yet they remain the same in winding down. So it's a coastal story, and it's the descent of the main character's route into madness, basically, set by the sea with some monsters. So that's kind of the present day one. And then I realized when I was sat at the last convention I was sat in, and our books were on the table, I thought, hey, we've got a kind of past, present, future thing going on that I never even noticed before, because you just write stuff and you don't realize what they look like when they're kind of together. And so I kind of put them all in order. You know, a little bit of OCD for you, but so yeah, the past, present, future. So this is our futuristic one that I wrote during lockdown, and I'm on the 2nd issue at the moment. We've got these are all ongoing, so they will just go on until we get bored or people yell at us to stop, but that's not necessarily going to work. So this is the second, the pages from the second one that I'm showing you just now. That's the first page, and this is the other page, one of the other ones I've done. I've not completed this, but so this is the synopsis that Adam's wrote, because he knows my stories quite well. So, when you're done, right? Well, Isaac doesn't think so. In fact, he makes his business to finish what others started. All sounds pretty innocent until you consider those others are no longer among the living. Isaac is about to learn that some things should stay unfinished. But for that, he's going to need a friend, and Bob is not your average friend. So it's kind of the all of our stories are kind of spiritual, kind of ghosty. Most of them have ghosts in them, or some kind of spirit elements, because we like the kind of horror themes as well. So yeah, that's our story, and yeah, we'll just continue on forever.
Brilliant, thank you. I love how expressive your art is. I just think it's fantastic. But I'm gonna call you back on something, because so I used to work at a university in London, and it went through a phase of movies, TV series, and comics blowing up my university, because it used to be next to the Thames barrier. So there was this amazing phase of like every time I'd see something on television and London was exploding, it would be like, yep, there's the university, and up it goes. So but amazing. And I think there's some things that I've written down that I'm going to come back to, I think. So let's go on to our last person, and then I'll hit you with it in a minute. So Lorraine, yeah. There was something really amazing that you said that I'm gonna pull back for everybody, I think. Okay, so Lorraine Wilson is a conservation scientist who lives by the sea, more of the sea for everybody, who lives by the sea in Scotland, writing speculative fiction influenced by folklore. So everything just feels like it's really falling together with the four of you. It's really interesting, and the wilderness. She's the author of multi-award finalist This Is Our Undoing, and The Way the Light Bends. Her third novel, Mother Sea, is due out in 2023. And I know Meg is one of the people listening here, and has mailed me, I think, 3 times now, and saying, you've got to read this, it's absolutely brilliant. So yes, and that was actually before you were one of the speakers as well, Lorraine. So you are absolutely on the TBR. Okay, go for it, please.
Thank you. So Yeah, thanks for that introduction. I just to add that in terms of my sort of the context from which I approach this question, I guess, is that I'm also mixed race, third culture, and I live with disabling illness. And so I have the sort of conservation training background, which means that I'm very interested in our relationship, humanity's relationship with our environment. And then the sort of marginalized kind of whatever framework that influences a lot of what I look for in SFF, and also a lot of where I see my role as a writer, as a creator within SFF. So what I'm going to do is give you a very, very short reading from literally the first paragraph of This Is Our Undoing. And then I'm going to witter a little bit about my thoughts on this research issue. So This Is Our Undoing is a dystopian novel set in a future Europe riven by climate change and divisive politics. And it takes place in a remote research station in the Rila Mountains in Bulgaria. And this is the opening few sentences. Some days, Lena Stevenson forgot about her ghosts entirely. She almost believed that the miles between her and her family were choice rather than necessity. Today was one of those days, and the last. There was a storm spinning in across Western Europe, extinguishing wildfires. There were bomb attacks and migrants drowning. But here in the Rila Mountains, there was only Lena, cycling old roads to Beli Iskar, its red tiled houses dotted between trees and incandescent in the sun. A cat crossed the track, and it was still a surprise to see them after Flu and the culls. Two women in their garden shifting logs were watching her. Here it begins. So I'm going to leave you there. So literally a very tiny snippet, but just to give you a sense of that I go for fairly dystopian settings in a way in my futures. They are always very grounded. They're always very logical trajectories from where we are now, but perhaps slightly pessimistic. But I think that both the pessimistic and the optimistic narratives are equally important. I'm really interested in the research that's being done on the impacts of climate fiction. And from what I've seen so far, it's the optimistic narratives that result in behavioral change in readers. So there's obviously an immense power in looking at optimistic futures. But I think that the pessimistic futures are where we go to explore our fears and where we go to find ways to navigate our fears. And I realized when I was sort of thinking about this session that my approach so far has been to do both together. Why choose? In that I take a very pessimistic macroscopic view. So my world view is quite dystopian in my future books, but my microscopic view, the microcosm within which my characters interact with one another, is much more hopeful. So say in This Is Our Undoing, my characters, the world is fairly dark, it's fairly bleak, but my characters in their little remote research station, their disability, their gender or sexual identity, their racial heritage are normalized and accepted and are not a source of pain for within the narrative. And I've sort of done the same with Mother Sea, which is coming out next year. It's the same kind of approach, but more about the global inequality and climate change. And I realized that the reason that I do that, I think, it's because we are facing so many existential fears at the moment with climate change and divisive politics, which are obviously indelibly intertwined. And it's so easy to be disempowered by that and to feel defeatist almost. And the systems kind of enforce our passivity, you know, that helps prop up the system. And our passivity is one of the biggest dangers we face in a way. So I think that my approach to my writing has always been that I'm trying to find a way of saying, yes, it's overpowering and overwhelming, and these are global things that we can't fix, but there are ways to be the pebble dropped into a still pond. And maybe you can't save the world, but maybe you can save a life or save a heart, and that's just as important. And we need to, I think I look for narratives that are ways to empower ourselves in the face of disempowerment. So I think I'll stop there.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah. Gosh, I think, yeah, I've sort of oh, which bit am I gonna mention? I think the line that you gave about the cat, given that, you know, when we came on the chat, all our cats were around us. I was so struck when the Ukraine war began of the shots of people with their pets. I think they were some of them were very manufactured and marketed in a really, really unpleasant way, but also there was something so visceral about some of those pictures that line really, you know, it's what happens when things happen is incredibly important to us. We set this panel to be about change, I think, for some of the reasons that you just gave as well, that we do live in a time of divisive politics, you're completely right, and that we also live in a space where it's often difficult to kind of be positive or negative. And so to sort of move into questions, I'd like to kind of ask you a couple first before we go into the questions that people are going to ask in the chat. And Marita has just asked everybody, do please put your chat there, put your questions there. And I think I gotta go for Tanya's quote. I think she said, "Times change so that they remain the same." And I think one of the big things about writing about change is that it's one of the quickest things to date in some ways. You know, we write about these things because they're so important to us, but the future changes those things immediately. I was talking to a friend on Monday. I went down to the Science Museum, and he said that he'd read this book about the 1880s where outrageously one of the changes was that when you went into a hat shop, the statues in the hat shop were of modern people, not of the old philosophers, you know. And that's the kind of, you can see where they were going with the science fiction there, because they wanted to talk about how politics had been lost almost, which of course is a very modern thing. So how much do you think you can change in your creative practice, but how much does remain the same? Where do you keep things and where do you lose them? If anyone wants to go first, put your hand up. If not, I'm going to pick on you because I am a teacher. So okay, Lorraine's just spoken. So Kirsty, you are top left. So
well, a complicated question. I find myself going back a lot lately in my writing. My novels are a very, very loose trilogy. So The Gracekeepers, which was my first novel, is set in the future in a world where everything's flooded. There's just these few islands left, and most people live on boats kind of traveling between these islands, set in a very, very distant future. And then the second book, The Gloaming, was set in the loose, fantastical present, I suppose. And then the next one that's coming out is medieval. So I appear to be doing a trilogy backwards, which wasn't really what I intended, but you know, it's just the way it goes. And again, just like what you were saying, and just like Tanya's quote, I actually find things don't change as much as we think that they do. And actually, if you look back through history, the things that people complain about have remained the same. Like there are quotes from ancient Rome where people are like, there's too much information these days. Kids don't respect their parents these days. Who can keep up with the fashions? There's too much technology. You know, Victorians, everyone's living Victorian time must have been, I think, quite, my next book's going to be Victorian, because I feel like my mind's very much there, because I think there's a lot of parallels to how we live now. These huge technological advances, these huge advances in how people communicated. It must have been an absolutely mind-blowing to think you can speak in real time to someone on the other side of the world. That was unknown up until this point, that you can record music and replay it. You can record a video of someone. You know, if you watch very old silent films, you know, you're watching ghosts. Those people are long dead. And that of course was this huge thing, that you can photograph people and keep a visual representation of them throughout all of history. So I think, yeah, things don't change as much as we think they do in terms of human nature and how we feel about things, how we feel about each other, how we react to things. But I also very much connect with what Lorraine was saying about you can be that pebble. And I saw a tweet that was saying, you know, like a silly meme tweet that was saying, oh, there's all these sci-fi time travel stories about people going back in time and changing one tiny thing, and it changes the future hugely. But we never think that something small that we're doing now is going to change the future in some way. And I know it was a silly meme, but it did make me go, whoa. That's really having like a Keanu Reeves moment of like, whoa. Because I thought that was really interesting, because you don't, and the thing is that we don't know, right? We don't know what we do now is going to change the future in a positive or a negative way. And I found this recently that my friend is on a book tour right now, and she's doing a lot of school events, and she was saying, you wouldn't believe how many queer teens like have read my books. And I'm not aware of this. I don't like hang out with teens, especially being like an ancient hag, it would be weird. So I just find that really interesting.
A bit harsh, I think.
I embody my haggitude, you know, I'm into it. I'm okay with it. But I love that. And I think, you know, the books that I read as a queer teen, you know, there was a lot less of it around at the time, but I picked up on what was there, and it was really life-changing to me. And so I just have to hope that something that I write, if I put things out there into the world, if I portray queer relationships in my books as just existing and not existing without conflict, but also not necessarily being a source of conflict, either for the people experiencing them or the people around them. You know, I just have to hope that that's going to do some good in the future. And I suppose that's the thing, though. We can't know are those ripples going to sink without a trace, or are those ripples going to keep going and going. So yeah, I guess my answer is things don't change that much, but they do change. We just can't say how.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I can't see the chat, but I can see people spamming the heart button on that one. And I think, you know, that kind of goes back to what you said, Lorraine. Actually, it's that we take out some of the sources of pain, we take out so that we can talk about other things. But I do wonder whether you need to go and sit next to Tanya at a table so that you can have past, present, future in your stuff together. Yeah, Lily, how do you show? I mean, I think the video that you showed, there was some very obvious connections between the kind of verbal and visual change there. I'm really glad that you showed the lyrics as well. I think that gave it a lot more meaning. How do you kind of push that through the narratives that you show in your music, and also the sound as well? You know, you were saying about how you use science fiction music as dated, you know, it has that sort of dated theremin feel to it. So yeah.
So I think one of the easiest ways to push a narrative is in the lyrics, just because we're used to, I think, thinking of narrative in written form, whether it's in novels we read or if it's spoken in stories and films. So that's one obvious way to do it. But the kind of point of putting lyrics to music is to give it an extra dimension that's not just poetry or not just a story. And I think you can do quite a lot with mood changes, texture changes, tone changes, rhythm changes, and things like that. So you could say the same thing in the same words, but if you put a different kind of rhythm behind it, whether it's the speed of it or whether it's like glitchy versus smooth, things like that, you can give the person hearing those lyrics a different experience while they hear them that may make them think about it in a different way. And we've worked quite a lot with other musicians collaborating as well, and in that way learned how different genres of music, or just like different individuals' ways of approaching the same kind of theme, can be really different and give different perspectives on the same thing. That's really interesting. So we did a hip hop collaborative album called Music for Hypercapitalists, which is told from the perspective of people that are being interviewed for like a kind of evil, boring corporation, and they give their views on like capitalism, being overworked, racism, the apathy and depression of living in a capitalistic society, all in like different songs, some of them looking to the future, some of them looking at the present, and the art of hip hop and the way they deliver these words with different expressions of voices and their different voices gives completely different feels to what they're saying, to if I were just to read their lyrics. It's completely different. And then we also worked more recently with some classical musicians as well, and they bring another different perspective to it. So with music, pushing a narrative is multifaceted, and you've got to kind of interweave all these different methods of doing it so that it comes out as a cohesive thing, or not cohesive, because sometimes if you make it dissonant and incohesive, it can actually be quite interesting for the listeners to kind of feel a bit confused and have to pull it apart themselves afterwards.
That sounds very much like the cacophony that that Kirsty played right at the very beginning, actually. And yeah, I am currently knitting my own boyfriend. But again, all of those different messages with really impactful moments coming through, along with what superficially appears to be quite kind of, you know, sort of dross adverts, but actually everything's got a, you know, there's something there in all of them. So
yeah, sorry, I'll just pop in and say what I meant to say when I was at the beginning is the way that the show ends is with a similar thing, with this cacophony building, but it's real headlines, so headlines from now, because what I found really interesting about the story of Tamlin is obviously it's 500 years old, but it's very much it's a pro-choice story. It's about Janet doesn't want to be pregnant, so she goes to seek herbs to have an abortion, and she's shamed for that in various ways. So yeah, it begins, and we wanted them to be a little bit silly, some of them, you know, the adverts. And then at the end, I think possibly the audience thinks, oh, it's this again, we're doing the headlines again. But they're real ones. They're about people's choices being taken away. They're about trans kids being targeted. They're about people being denied abortion rights, all these different things. So yeah, we wanted to sort of bring it almost like we're in the dystopia now. So yeah, that's how the show kind of ends as well. And also that album sounds amazing. I love that sounds of hip hop. It sounds so good.
Yeah. Yeah, Lorraine, I'm going to go to you because again, you said, you sort of talked about this as well, about this idea that we remember to forget and we forget to remember. You said that one of your first lines was, sometimes she forgot about her ghosts entirely. Today wasn't one of those days. Today was one of those days. My apologies. And I think, yeah, how when you're trying to sort of pull that idea of leaving some change behind and bringing others through, where do you sort of go to in order to sort of do that? Because you talk very much about sort of quite contemporary ideas and things that are happening at this very moment in order to inform that.
I think actually I'll just quickly say, like, along the lines of what Kirsty just said, I should have said earlier, one of the other things about dystopia is that what is one person's fantastical future is another person's lived reality. So yeah. I think when we often talk about dystopias as a sort of theoretical, they're often actually not, if you just look beyond your particular little sort of westernized bubble. But I think in terms of what I keep, again, it goes back to what Kirsty said about human nature. And I don't think that human nature changes that much, really. And I don't think it will change that much. So I think when I'm looking at sort of trajectories forward from where we are now, it has to be believably rooted in what I understand of our psychology. And that can be both good and bad, right? You know, we've got immense power to be altruistic. We've got immense power to be compassionate for people who are in situations completely alien to our own. We've also got immense power to revert to tribalism whenever we feel threatened. And I think there is potential to go incredibly sort of in any direction in terms of levels of optimism. And it just, for me, I think the biggest question is the tribalism thing. That's the biggest hurdle to overcome if I want to write a hopeful future, because we are living beyond our means, planetarily wise. So our resources are under threat. And was it Lily who mentioned climate-driven migration as being one of the biggest issues we are facing and will face? And that's, you know, our resources are under threat, and our instincts are to revert to tribes and us versus them, and, you know, circle the wagons and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a really interesting question as a writer, and I'm not sure I have all the answers yet, is looking for ways to provide realistic societies that haven't resorted to that, that have found ways around that. And I think we have the power because we are very good at communicating. And if you can communicate, you can get over things like that. But whether we have the will as a society collectively is another question. And I don't know. I'm not sure I have the answer. I think that's one of the things I explore constantly whenever I'm writing. And each time I come up with a slightly different answer of how you can achieve that and whether you can achieve it and at what point it breaks, even if you do achieve some sort of what's the word, collaborative society and non-tribal. What is holding it together? What's the external threat, or what's the internal structures that are holding that in place?
And
I'm not sure that's an answer.
No, I think also, you know, you're right, as a creative, staying in the same place. I mean, there are a lot of people who are very successful doing that, but this is not really the place to do that, I don't think, you know, and that this kind of movement, and we don't have to have the answers in order to be able to explore them, I think, as well. You know, that's really important. So yeah, no, well, thank you. So Tanya, oh my God. So I think I want to sort of go back to this idea, this first question again. Yeah. So, you know, these times change so that they remain the same. You also talked very much whilst showing us pictures of we fishermen having trouble.
Yeah, you should just show pictures to people, not.
Oh no! What I thought was really funny was that you were showing us these kind of really out of these world pictures, and at the same time you said the mundane is very important. It was this really sort of wow. There's a real transition there. But yeah, so how do you show this idea of change within your art and within the work that you do?
I think it's I was thinking about this, and it's a really hard question.
Yes, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's really freaking hard. And even listening to all of these lovely ladies speak, it still hasn't I still don't really know. But if I was to go forward with my work into the future, you kind of just have to just do what feels right for you, and do and produce work that has heart, and create characters that you think will live on, and have things that kind of bases them in real life, because they're not real characters. But if you give them heart, and if you give them a basis of kind of human emotions and everything, you're always going to feel for that character, even if they're a monster, or if they're a ghost, or, you know, and then that's my hope. But I do a lot of teaching, and I go to conventions a lot, and I'm always really surprised, like, you know, I'm super old. So when I was learning how to draw, and when I was, you know, figuring out what I was going to do, you have to go to the library, and you have to just draw for ages, and you know, have limited kind of media to draw from. And now it's just so much stuff, and you think that would be detrimental to people because they would just be on TikTok the whole time, right? That was my hope anyway. You know, my hope that I just wouldn't have any competition from people younger than me. So it's like, oh, you're just going to be on TikTok the whole time. So, you know, whatever. But when I'm teaching these classes, and when I'm doing the comic book mass classes and everything, and the amount of talent that the kids are showing me, and they're coming up with their ideas, and they're just like, but you're supposed to be on TikTok. You're supposed to wipe your creativity completely. But it doesn't. People still create stuff, and people still want to tell their stories from their perspective, and that's what's really interesting in comics at the moment, and in indie cartoons as well, is people are finding their way of telling their own story, and it's not just driven by the people that have the money, that give publishing rights to people, and that have the houses that people had to go into. They don't have to do that anymore. They can just tell their stories and just put it out there for everyone to read. And that's what's really exciting to me, just hearing different people's point of view. And it's just really cool and interesting. And so it lives on.
Yeah. I will hide the vast amount of concept artists that we've got at Stafford's then. There's quite a few of them. I will encourage them to get on TikTok.
No, yes, do, yes.
Go on. And not submit their essays. Oh no, maybe not, or their work. So okay, right. So we actually do have some questions, which again, oh my goodness, which one am I going to have a look at? I had a look at 3 of them, and then there was another one. So I think I'm going to go for Alexandra's first. So thank you, Alexandra, who said this is a general question for everybody after Kirsty's comment that we're in the dystopia now. So what have you learned, or do you think we can learn from Indigenous science fiction and post-apocalyptic literature? So what can we actually learn?
Okay, shall I go? I don't have that much to say about it. I think I find a lot of post-apocalyptic literature that I've consumed anyway to be quite unhelpful. As Lorraine says, for the reasons of tribalism. It seems to me like a lot of times post-apocalyptic fiction, just the mainstream stuff really, like zombie apocalypses and things, it's a lot about like guns, get your guns, gotta protect everything, like someone's going to take it from you. And I think actually what we saw from the pandemic and what we continue to see during this pandemic, which isn't really over, is that's not really how people reacted. Actually, I mean, I don't know about where you all were, but like where I live, which is Glasgow, which has a very tough reputation, people so came together. There were all these groups where people would make meals for each other. They would say, if you are sheltering, do you want me to go and get your shopping for you? You know, I got shopping for friends who were sheltering for various reasons because they had health problems and things. And I just think that's what everybody did. Everybody came together. We all stayed at home to protect one another. I mean, okay, maybe Matt Hancock didn't, but most of us stayed at home to protect one another, right? And I just think that's actually how people react in a crisis. And I think maybe we just didn't know that, because writers can only write what we know, can't we? We can only write from our own experience, from our own lives, from our own imaginations. We can't write what we can't imagine, really. So perhaps we just didn't know that that's how humanity would react. But I thought it was actually really reassuring. And I remember seeing a really interesting thing that was, I fell down an internet pit once and started watching this show that was about like doomsday preppers. This was pre-pandemic. It's not quite so much fun now watching doomsday preppers. But I thought it was really interesting because as a mass generalization, the straight male doomsday preppers, they had a huge armory of weapons, and it was all about like, this is my little compound, this is my bunker, my family are going to be in here because everyone's going to try and take from me what I have. And there was one woman on this show, and hers was so different. Her little prep kit, like she had condoms because she was like, you know, people are going to want to have sex, but they maybe don't want to fall pregnant after all this is happening. And she had like all these different religious books because she was like, look, I live in a really multicultural area. Who knows what's going to end up being the dominant religion? So I need to educate myself on what's going to be going on in society.
Wow.
And I thought that was so interesting that like all these men were like, need to keep things the same. How can I keep it the same? Keep what's mine. And this woman, not that it's all gendered necessarily, but in this example it was. And this woman was like, I'm going to have to integrate into however society looks, and this is how I'm going to do it. And I found that really interesting. So I don't know if that really answers the question. I guess what I'm saying is we take what we want from things, and I don't think I'm here to say we should take this message from the literature that's out there, or I actually think there's a lot to take from, you know, old stories, from myths and from just very ancient stories. But I'm not here to tell you what that should be. I think we should all just come up with that ourselves. I think we should bring ourselves to stories and take what we can from them.
Yeah.
I guess I would just add, because there's a big conversation in conservation as well about Indigenous knowledge and the use of Indigenous knowledge in conservation and land management practices and stuff. So there's kind of a bit of overlap here as well, I think, with the literature. And I guess my take on that particularly is, I agree with Kirsty, you sort of take what you need, and there isn't a lesson to be learned necessarily. It doesn't have to be a lesson to be learned from any particular subgenre. But I guess an important thing to be looking out for and listening for is that we don't necessarily need capitalism. And a lot of mainstream sort of dystopians and stuff are like, oh, capitalism collapsed and therefore everybody died. and you know, if you kind of look outside the mainstream literature is written by, you know, middle class, able-bodied, cishet white men, there are other ways for society to function, and those can be incredibly far more interesting, frankly, than just the bank's closed, therefore chaos.
Yeah, interesting. And I think both Lily and Tanya, you sort of, thinking on the answer, you both talked about post-scarcity and also the destruction of a specific place, but what then happens. And it's really interesting, Tanya, that the page that you showed was somebody meditating, or it looked like he was meditating, focusing.
So he that's how he gets his kind of energy, is he meditates. And I'm not a very spiritual person, so to write someone that's very spiritual is drawing from myself something that I don't particularly have, but I understand and I get it and everything. And that's kind of what he all needs. But I always found as most all of our stories have some dystopian qualities in them, and I always found dystopia quite inspiring. And I don't think I wonder if that's just like a Scottish thing, because a lot of Scottish literature is very dystopian, and it's all about kind of that dystopia happens and it lets people just stop. Something just stops working. That's what dystopia is. And how do you continue on, and how do you start again? And that's just always really fascinating. Like, how do you continue on, and what are you going to make of it, you know? And that's just always a really inspiring point to write from. So that's probably why it's so why it's just really prolific. I always like that question. So I think it'll always remain that kind of that topic, because it's such a broad way of answering that question.
Sorry, excuse me. Sorry, I got oof in the middle of that right towards the end. Yeah, and Lily, you said that you kind of go from one side or the other. You know, some of yours are dystopian, some of them aren't. But also, again, this kind of idea of post-scarcity. So, is it more that than it is post-apocalyptic? Do you think?
I suppose it's, well, post-scarcity seems so utopic already, because I think we've throughout human history always had problems with resources, and we still do. And so the idea of not having to squabble and fight over resources makes post-scarcity already seem utopic. But one interesting thing about some works of science fiction that are both utopias and dystopians at the same time are ones that look at how maybe things on the surface appear to be good but really aren't. So you could have a post-scarcity society where everyone says everyone gets what they need, but the reason they get what they need is because certain people are seen to need less than others. So it's rather the people themselves change to fit the resources rather than the amount of resources change to fit what everyone actually needs. So some examples of this could be maybe like in Brave New World, you have people that are like genetically engineered to have certain levels in society. Some of them are engineered to enjoy doing menial labor and not having the frivolities of the life of people that are genetically engineered to want those things. Or you have something like in William Morris's News from Nowhere, where it says that women are treated equally now, but it's really because in the story, women are assumed to love doing domestic labor and looking after children. So it's like you can have something that is called a utopia or post-scarcity society, because technically maybe, but in order to get there, you have to warp what you say people want to be happy rather than actually make them happy.
Yeah, good job, William Morris.
Thanks
for that.
Things are slightly progressive in that novel, but not the whole thing. You need to see it in that way, that like there's some feminism and some really like the opposite of feminism in there.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, it was one that I was told to read because it had feminism in it. And I was like, really? Where? Help.
Yeah. Feminism if you women change.
Yeah. But I think, I mean, sort of on the tip of my tongue is also, you know, the culture, and Ian Banks, you know, that's something that he addresses quite a lot in his writing, and obviously sort of premier moment of Scottish fiction, which I think we've sort of alluded to. So okay, I think we've probably got, stop writing questions, everybody. We've probably only got time for one. We will put up the questions afterwards so that people can see them as well, because they're really interesting, I think. So I'd like to just bring it back, because this is kind of the theme. Is there a very specific Scottish context for any of the work? So it says, this is from Grace, actually. Thank you, Grace. I sound like radio DJ. Okay, could I ask about the Scottish context? Some of you talked about the way you respond to folklore and to place, and to the material reality of writing or publishing or producing in Scotland. How do you actually see this creativity linked with you as science fiction and fantasy practitioners? Because I also really felt that reading your biographies, it was coming through that there was a lot of place. There was a lot of kind of location in what a lot of you had written. So yeah, how do you place Scotland within this?
I could go if nobody else is.
Go for it. Yeah.
My first book isn't based in Scotland, but my second book is. So I guess as in terms of writing stories, and that one does draw on Scottish folklore quite a lot. My big interest is how folklore acts as a lens between society and our environment, and it shapes sort of the way that we view aspects of our environment and the way we interact with it, and that can have massive, even when it's incredibly unconscious, it can have massive consequences for the structure of society and the behavior of society. You know, you've got to look at, we don't consider ourselves very superstitious, but black cats are still the least adopted animals.
Don't listen, Badger, don't listen.
You know, so we carry superstition and folklore within us, even when we don't think we do. And that really interests me as a writer. And I think that was something I explored very much in my second book, looking at, again, when you're under emotional stress, you turn to the unknown, you turn to the shadows, you turn to the sort of your inner folklore, your inner superstitions as ways of seeking hope or seeking answers that sort of logic isn't providing you. And so I think as an SFF writer, that's an incredibly powerful tool, right? You can draw up a folklore, whether it's a real world one or a one you've made up yourself, as a way of engineering your characters' behaviors and your characters' responses to the stresses that you're putting them under. So as a writer, it's a really powerful tool. And as a sort of more pragmatically, the material reality of writing and publishing in Scotland, well, I wouldn't be published if it wasn't for the Scottish publishing industry. I think we've got an amazingly powerful indie scene in Scotland. And I think my publisher, Luna Press, who's my first two books are with, is an incredibly global looking, very small indie, but very global looking and very diverse in the voices and the stories that they publish. And that's, I think that she's an exemplar, Francesca at Luna Press, is of the best that Scotland is sort of producing in terms of being a really outward looking industry, and a really just engaged with cultural narratives as a publishing community, I think. So yeah, I think being a writer in Scotland is something that I'm very grateful for, and it has definitely supported me as a writer.
Yeah, and I don't know if Francesca Barbini's on this chat, but yeah, she does have the most amazing eye for a collective voice in that publication house. It's quite extraordinary. So yeah.
And she's lovely.
And she's so I feel like, Tanya, when I sort of looked at your face, you were doing a big fat nope. What is it, a big fat nope? Because I think that's an answer.
I don't set out to kind of write particularly Scottish things just because I'm Scottish, but it will come through in some of the the things that the characters reference, or I mean, we don't name, apart from Winding Down, we don't name where the comics are set, apart from North Yorkshire in Winding Down. It's all kind of up for grabs. I will tell my mum that that it's set in Edinburgh, that it's all set in Edinburgh, because that's what she wants to hear. Because they all, my mum and dad's DVD collection is all, this was set in Edinburgh, this was filmed in Edinburgh. This is but yeah, I don't go out to kind of rewrite the kind of Scottish all these kind of things, wonderful, right, because Edinburgh's, I can't compete with these guys here. There's so much, there's so many writers and so many artists that are from Edinburgh and Scotland as a whole. It's ridiculous. So I'm not trying to shove anyone aside. I just want to write what I know and what I like. So sometimes it comes through as Scottish, sometimes it doesn't. So yeah, big fat no then.
Yeah.
I'm kind of the same, actually. Very little of what I write is explicitly set in Scotland. I think just like one novel and a couple of short stories out of everything. But I do feel like it is Scottish, like it's got a Scottish feel rather than like being explicitly set there. And I don't really know even how I would define that.
You don't have to push it, you know, because you are Scottish. So if you you know, if it's like Disney did it, it's not going to be you know, it's not going to feel like it's yourself, you know.
Yeah, I think as well in the, because I'm more in the kind of literary fiction world and more so than the speculative fiction world, although I would like to change that. And I just think in literary fiction there's two types of stories you can tell about Scotland. You can do Shortbread Tin, or you can do Train Spotting. So you can do like lovely hills and glens and fairies, or you can do like I grew up in the slums and everyone's an alcoholic and it's terrible. And like that's the two stories really. And that's not my experience of Scotland. And I don't think actually that is, not to say it's no one's experience, of course it is, but it's also for a lot of people that's not their experience. So I also think we should open up what we consider to be a Scottish story. And for me, what I love about folklore and Scottish folklore in particular is this mix of the wonder and the weird. And I think that's what keeps drawing me back to these old stories, this sense of just the wonder of the world, that every time we think we've figured the world out or we know exactly what the world's all about, there's some new technological advancement or something gets discovered at the bottom of a loch somewhere or on some other planet. And the world is just so much weirder and full of wonder than we know. So I think that's what I get from it.
I did do a short story based on a poem that my friend wrote, which is it's amazing, and I had a Kelpie in it. And to be fair, I really wanted to draw a Kelpie, so I said, you do a poem and I'll write, and it's got to be a Kelpie. And it's a really horrible horror story about a child that goes missing, and the guy that's responsible wanting to tie his story in with the Kelpie, because then everyone would forget about the crimes that he committed, because then everyone would just talk about how he was taken with the Kelpie. But it's a Kelpie in it, so they're Scottish, it's fine.
I did a Kelpie horror, and do you know what? I blame those big statues because they're so frightening. So it makes us all think Kelpie must be a horror story.
They're in it's not the newest Elle McNichol book, but it is one of, I think it's the second one that she did. There's Kelpies in that, and they're scary. They're just creepy, and that yeah.
I love them. They're great.
Yeah, I think maybe that's the draw. Is that I think also those statues, they're just headless They're headless as well, they're heads, but they're so disembodied that yeah. Anyway. So yeah, Lily, does it inform your music or not?
Some of it. As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm not originally from Scotland. I grew up in England, but I moved here when I was 18, so I've been here for 13 years now. And spending my whole adult life in Scotland, I think, has influenced who I am as a person, and I love it here. Lots of music we have, I think, is not set in any particular place, or some of it earthbound, some of it spacey. But the most recent work we've made is an album that's going to be released in April next year, and it is a electronic pop rock opera set in a space station in the year 3000, and it is a space station populated by Scottish people that decided to make a space station and go up in space. So it's taken a lot of Scottish values and ideals into space, and some influence from and ideas from the Scottish Enlightenment. And the kind of narrative of this opera is based kind of around the surface story is about alien contact and whether we should reply to the aliens or not, and it's based on game theory and Seaton Liu's Three-Body Problem trilogy. It's an amazing science fiction.
Former Hugo Award winner. Everybody
Yeah.
from Worldcon.
So we take some ideas about his dark forest theory and game theory things.
Oh, yeah.
And incorporate them into, do these people on the space station reply to aliens or not? But the underlying kind of reference to current world is the Scottish referendum, and we had a live show in which we got the audience to vote yes or no based on like whether do we want to welcome the aliens, or do we want to it was more like, do we want to risk a better future by saying yes to this, or do we want to stay safe and say no and continue how we are? Maybe a little bit of bias in there, but the audience did vote yes, and a lot of people did see the parallels in the story with the Scottish referendum. So in that way, Scottish politics did enter into a science fiction-y opera that we released, but it doesn't have to be read in that way. You can just enjoy it as an alien contact story, but people enjoy that part of it as well. And we collaborated with a lot of people on that as well, not all from Scotland, from around the world, and it was interesting to hear their views on it as well.
I'm hoping it had lots of really bad jokes about square sausages and tablets as well in the future.
Oh, we should have done that. We had one about Iron
Sorry.
Now I'm like, quick, go back. The album's finished.
Retcon.
Maybe we can slip some more things in there. Re-record it.
Oh, okay. So we've only got a few minutes left. So I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to just ask you where people can find you, since I feel like we answered, I think, 2 questions from the audience and one of the 9 questions that I've got written down. So there's obviously a huge amount more here. Let's just go around from the top again. That just makes it easier. So yeah, Kirsty, where can we find you? Where can we read you? Where can we see you?
Very easy to find. Most bookshops should have my stuff in stock, and if not, I'm sure it's orderable very easily. I'm the same on basically all social media. I'm on Twitter at Kirsty Logan, and you can see the spelling of my name just there. I'm on Instagram at Kirsty Logan, and I have just joined TikTok, horrifyingly, and I am Kirsty Logan writer. I've done one whole TikTok, so you can also follow me on there if you like.
Fantastic. And just as a reminder to everybody, don't use Amazon, go to your local bookshop. There are recommendations for local bookshops in the chat, I can see as well. So yeah, Lily.
Yes, I have posted my website in the chat because it's easier for people. postcodepromqueen.com, and also on most social media platforms. Some variation of like at postcode prom queen or at postcode prom queen music, PCPQ music. There's a few of them, which is why I'm not reading them all out, but we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok now as well, which is really fun. And I think we've made a Mastodon just in case Twitter does go under and that takes over. Discord, I saw someone mention in the chat, and that's something we actually need to make, the Discord. But up until then, you can find us on all those other ones.
Fantastic. I'm glad that we got a Pusscat in just in the 11th hour there. Badger's come in, but he is not deigning to come over, and he's doing that thing where he's put his foot in the air and he's licking his bottom, the horrible animal. Tanya.
Hi. I will put my thing in the chat. So technical. That is where you can buy all of our books from. All of our I'm on Twitter and Instagram, Tanya Roberts or Enolian Slave. That's kind of where I hang my hat. I have ArtStation. Yeah, I have a bunch of stuff, but that's where you buy our books from, Blue Bottle Ink. And yeah, they make great Christmas presents.
Yep, it's not the last post date yet either. So we've still got
exactly. And I do a free sketch in everyone as well. So there you go.
Wow, there we go, everybody. Shill, quickly. Okay,
I'll do my chapbook then. I recently did a chapbook of British folklore retold queer, but with an artist called Block Forest who does like wood block prints, and you can buy that. It will arrive just in time for Christmas as well.
Yeah, that's a very sort of trad Christmas present as well, isn't it? It's a good one. Okay, Lorraine, I can see that you've already put some of your details from into
Twitter
the
and website, and books are on lunapress.com. My next book, Mother C, is out with Fairlight Books, so that pre-order link is up as well, on my website and on my Twitter account somewhere. So yeah, please come say hi, and I'll pop on Discord afterwards if anybody wants to ask questions. I'll try and answer them on the Discord group.
Fantastic. Yes, and yeah, again, I think you can see that Grace and Dimitra have just both put stuff for the Discord up as well, so do have a look at the chat. But yeah, well, thank you so much, everybody. That was really fantastic. That was really good fun, and I feel like we've kind of brightened up the evening a little bit as well, which is just good. So thank you to the four of you. Thank you to Marita and everybody else who's been helping on the Discord, who's been helping put this together. And of course, thank you very much to Dimitra. And yeah, I can see lots and lots of hands and lots of applause coming up. So please do thank everybody. So yeah, well, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your evenings.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for having me. Cheers.
Good evening.
Bye.